the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance, and it is titled Growing Regional Solidarity. So this evening we're joined by Southern Harvest. We've got organisers, suppliers, volunteers on board. So it's really exciting to have a nice big discussion about growing regional solidarity. And I will have the panelists introduce themselves in just a moment. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this evening we meet on the lands of First Nations people, and you're all calling in from different areas. So in my instance, I'm here in Hepburn, regional Victoria, which is Dja Dja Wurrung people and of the Kulin Nation. And their sovereignty was never ceded. So I invite you all to mention what traditional lands that you're on this evening, and if you don't know, it's a good time to find out. So next time you can contribute in the same way. Briefly, my name is Amy Padgett. I'm one of the committee members of the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance. I'm originally from New South Wales, but like I said, I'm in regional Vic, actually living at Meliadora, the permaculture property at the moment. A note on ABSA, most of you probably know the work that we do and what we stand for, but essentially we are a farmer-led organisation, and we fight for the right to nourishing and culturally appropriate food grown and distributed in ecological and ethically sound ways, and the right to collectively determine our own food and agricultural systems, which I'm sure most of you are at least interested in and passionate about that sort of stuff. Which is why it's a really great opportunity for you to join ABSA, because we are definitely stronger together. You're more than welcome to, I mean, if you're not members already, we'd love your support. So do head to absa.org.au and join up if you're not yet a member. It's a really good time to join because we have our annual convergence coming up, and I can chat about that later on this evening. But we've got lots of great things planned, and if you're a member, it's free. Just on the housekeeping, lastly, we are going to chat for half an hour, and then around the 6:30 mark, I welcome any of you who want to ask questions, more than welcome to pop your mic on and ask the question yourself. If you're a little bit camera shy, feel free to jot it in the chat and then I can ask it. But yes, so let's get chatting about Southern Harvest. I'll go first to Ruth. Ruth is I asked her what her title was, and technically she's the farmer market coordinator, but Bronwyn said she's the officer of everything. Essentially, yeah, operations manager at Southern Harvest. Ruth, would you like to introduce yourself and the organisation? And feel free to throw it over to Penny too.
Hi everyone. I'm Ruth Gaha-Morris. I'm the sort of everything officer at Southern Harvest at the moment. Our major activities being our multi-farm produce box scheme that we're going to talk about tonight, and our farmers market. Southern Harvest got a bit of an interesting background, and it's evolved a lot from what it began as. And like Amy said, we've got Penny on the line here, and she was involved in the early days where I really don't have a great deal of knowledge. So I was going to ask Penny to quickly tell us where we sort of came from with Southern Harvest, and then I can talk a little bit about what we're doing now.
Okay, I'm Penny Cothey, former AFSA committee member and Southern Harvest, lots of things like Ruth is. Originally, the beginnings of Southern Harvest was through the Regional Development Australia, Southern Inland Regional Development Australia was a government body that was set up to sort of build economies in regional areas. And so Southern Harvest was founded by that group under government funding as a food, I guess, trail group, and it was initially a marketing exercise. It took about 2 years, I think, when I first got involved, to try and wrestle it, I guess, from the council or government control into actual producer hands, which I guess aligns really similarly with AFSA. And after about 2 years, which would have been around 2013 or 14, the government withdrew funding and we became on our own, which at the time was absolutely fabulous, but meant we really had to dig deep and call on a lot of volunteer efforts to build, I guess, a producer and consumer community. But thankfully, that's where we've ended up. And Southern Harvest is a producer and consumer-led organisation looking at, I guess, education and delivery of local food systems in the area surrounding Canberra and southern New South Wales region. That's all I got to say.
Thanks, Penny. Yes, so we sort of went through a few evolutions, and I got involved in about 2014, where we were looking at developing a farmers market for Bungendore, which is the town I live in, because we didn't have one here, and a lot of people travelled into Canberra for the farmers markets, which was 45 minutes away, or to Braidwood, which was 40 minutes away. And we knew we had a farming community in the area, and a lot of them were on board with Southern Harvest at that time. And so that's how I got involved, being a consumer and wanting a farmers markets. And later on, I moved to helping to manage that farmers markets, and then became part of the Southern Harvest Executive Committee. And from there, we launched also our produce box scheme and our second market in 2017. Second market didn't really catch on, it only lasted for a year, but our produce box scheme, our multi-farm produce box scheme, which is based on a CSA model of consumers supporting farmers and being integrated in the entire scheme, has really taken off, and it's been very popular, and it's created an enormous community for Southern Harvest of both producers and subscribers and volunteers that continue to work together to grow that scheme. And we've gone from the initial, I think we started with about 20 to 30 subscribers at the end of 2017 to we're now sitting at around 120 subscribers. We don't have our subscriptions open at the moment, but we are still taking on really slowly as we feel we've got the produce, people from a waiting list that we started populating at the beginning of COVID, when everything sort of went a little bit haywire. We have probably around 15 farms that contribute to the produce box scheme, some to a greater degree than others. Many farms have their own schemes as well, their own CSAs that they run for part of the year or all of the year. And we've found that there's been many benefits for the farmers in that there's been a lot less waste in the produce that they would used to have at the end of the market cycle and the produce box cycle each week. They can funnel all of that into our scheme, where we aggregate from all of those 15 farms and put together boxes with a good degree of diversity and seasonality. Because our catchment's a little bit bigger as well, and we're just on the edge of a coastal catchment, we get that nice diversity in our produce boxes. With us today, we've got Jeff, who is one of our long-term farmer contributors, and also Bronwyn, who is one of our long-term volunteers. And I'd like to throw to Jeff now to just talk about how he got involved in Southern Harvest and the produce box scheme and what it's meant to him.
Yeah, hi. I'm on the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. I've been farming here near Bungendore for something like 25 years, market garden, and I've been running our own box scheme for about 24 years. I became involved with Southern Harvest, I think in 2016, when I had a surplus of produce, and I thought, well, I'd better try the local market. And it seemed to click, so I joined up and have grown my sales at the market ever since. And certainly since the box scheme started, that's taken an increasing proportion of my produce to the extent where just recently I've actually cut down my own box scheme and devoted more of my product through Southern Harvest. And I think I've something like 80% of my produce through Southern Harvest scheme. That's about all I want to say. I've been on a committee member for about 3 years now, and I've taken on the job of treasurer as of the last AGM, which has been made very easy by Ruth's work and another volunteer who got the books in order from a chaotic start. I'll throw it back to Ruth.
Maybe can I throw it to Bronwyn?
Oh, thanks, Ruth. Yeah, I'd first like to acknowledge that I'm also a visitor to the country that I'm sitting on. I grew up on Darug and Gundungurra country in the Blue Mountains, west of Sydney, but I've lived on Ngunnawal-Ngambri country for the past 22 years or so, and this is sacred country to which sovereignty was never ceded. And so I'd like to offer my respects and gratitude to Ngunnawal and Ngambri elders, past, present and emerging, not only for their care of country over millennia, but to the ancestors for keeping me safe while I'm on country. And a lot of the food that I eat is grown on Ngunnawal, Ngambri, Narrabri country, but also on neighbouring Yuin country in particular. And so I'd like to acknowledge country itself, not only for the material sustenance that I depend on, but also just for the lessons that it provides in its inherent kind of wisdom and beauty. So I'd also like to thank AFSA for hosting this wonderful series of webinars. It's a real honour to be part of them. So thanks to Amy and Tammi and Amita and everyone behind the scenes for making them happen. I became involved in Southern Harvest late in 2017 as a subscriber in the first season of the produce scheme. And a couple of seasons in, they were looking for a volunteer to take on the coordination at one site. So I put my hand up for that. And since then, I've volunteered in various different capacities, mainly helping with packing and distribution, and then setting up another collection site as the scheme expanded. But I've also been able to help with other things like organising farm tours and writing grant applications and doing some surveys to help evaluate the scheme, and fun things like helping Ruth in the kitchen at Harvest Festival, chopping mountains of garlic, and more recently COVID has given me an excuse to get out the sewing machine to sew produce bags. So it's been really wonderful to have a diverse range of things to be able to contribute to, all while being surrounded by people with shared values. So I'm really grateful to Ruth and the committee for all these different opportunities to be involved and to learn, and to be part of building a solidarity economy, and to learn to use my agency as a citizen and as a community member rather than just as a consumer to help affect positive change towards food systems that are fair and respectful of the people and the ecosystems that they depend on. So, so thanks, Ruth and everyone.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Bronwyn. A question for whoever wants to answer it from in whatever ways that you're involved with Southern Harvest. But I guess it'd be good to know in what ways Southern Harvest has brought the community together during times of the bushfires this summer, COVID, and other tumultuous events that I've heard the Canberra region has had in the last few months.
Well, I think because our scheme was always set up to be very inclusive of both the subscribers and the farmers, it was quite easy for us to transition to that higher level of support that was really needed during times of crisis. We set the scheme up so that it was completely volunteer-led initially. Every single every single site was made viable by the fact that the consumers that signed up to become subscribers all paid a certain amount of money that covered the cost of a volunteer being able to have their produce for free, or in many cases, if there was produce in excess, for that to be donated to people in need through a network of shelters, etc. in Canberra. So when we, especially when COVID happened and we needed to greatly increase the level of hygiene protocols, and it greatly increased the amount of time that was spent packing and distributing produce, because we couldn't do it in the bulk ways that we used to, where everyone got in there and worked together in close quarters and handed out produce. It had to move to being very individually packed and very separated in our working spaces. So we put out a call to our volunteers and said that we didn't think that we would be able to continue the scheme unless we had a lot more help. And that help was both the help of volunteers, but also for subscribers who didn't have the ability to help as a volunteer but could contribute financially. We appealed to them for their financial assistance as well. And we were absolutely overwhelmed with the response. Within 1 week, we went from approximately 4 to 5 volunteers a week to between 16 and 20 volunteers a week to pack everything and get it out to our subscribers. We also raised a significant amount of money that was able to buy us new equipment and increase the capacity of the facility that we had to make it possible to pack during the COVID times. We had a very similar response with our farmers markets as well, where we could no longer have open stalls for people to touch the produce or choose for themselves. We had to take everything to being pre-packaged, which we didn't want to do, or handled only by one person. So we again needed to ask for volunteers to fill those roles. And we were really lucky to be the only farmers market in the region who, well, we were lucky because we had such a good community. It wasn't luck, it was our community. We were the only farmers market in the region to be able to stay open, regional farmers market, and to be able to continue to provide food to our community. So I think it was really just that we had already developed that volunteer-led, volunteer-managed organisation that we were able to respond so well to the crisis.
Yeah, amazing. And that's not that's not an uncommon story to hear across the different organisations that we've chatted to during these solidarity sessions. The ability for organisations to sort of pivot and, kind of change what they were offering or change how they were distributing overnight. And it's sort of that flexibility is resilience, really. And these are the times that we get tested, I guess. Is there anything you would like to add, Jeff or Bronwyn, on the ways in which Southern Harvest has brought the community together?
No, well, I'd endorse what Ruth has said, but Ruth's probably played down her own importance, is her organizational skills, and emphasizing, particularly with COVID, how we had to have separate, we have a sort of a community stall. I run the till, but we've got a volunteer or 2 volunteers serving the customers and not allowing them to touch things. But that all takes organization and persuasion, and it's persuasion and liberal use of hand sanitizers and face masks and you name it. Ruth has thought of it all.
Yeah, I think I can also add to like Ruth's amazingness in just making everything happen, and just the inspiration that she is for everyone else in the scheme to just keep going. But another aspect, I think, of having the community of subscribers felt have spoken to me in some of the interviews I've been doing about feeling more grounded and connected to the community throughout the bushfires and COVID, and really proud that they've been able to contribute in some financial and practical way to support farmers to continue what they're doing. And yeah, I've got just a really short quote here that someone has said. I feel really connected to my local community. During the fires and COVID, Southern Harvest became especially important as I felt grounded to my surroundings and proud that my income was supporting the scheme along with providing us quality produce. So I think that's something that's come through a lot of my conversations with subscribers of late.
In terms of what sort of makes Southern Harvest special, or the model that Southern Harvest is there anything in particular that you think, is it the multi-box CSA scheme that you have? Is it the farmers markets, the events that you run, the educational workshops? Is there anything in particular that you think Southern Harvest does really well? Or is there any, is there a general sort of suggestion that you would have for people who wanted to sort of take Southern Harvest and replicate it in other areas?
I think what makes it special is the connections, that everything we do generally is connected in some way and very grounded in the area that we're in. So our producer members, our farmer members contribute, or no, they don't contribute, sorry. We provide for them the markets that they need to sell into the community directly. If they don't have their own CSA scheme, or if they do have their own CSA scheme. So those, many of them will contribute in ways back to the community by providing education, as well as the food that they're providing to their community. And then Southern Harvest finds a way to facilitate that stream of knowledge, it going both ways. And I think that's the really important thing that we do. That's the really special thing that Southern Harvest do, is it helps to facilitate all those connections between the subscribers, the shoppers at the farmers markets, the producers, the farmers, and then the knowledge stream that goes between all of those groups. I think, yeah, that's where we're special.
Fantastic, Ruth. And the details of that, like what is it that you communicate, or how do you communicate? Do you have like a newsletter, social media, a WhatsApp group for volunteers? Like what are the ways that you can keep people connected?
We use a variety of media. So we do a newsletter, and we do have a number of groups online, which are private groups so the Produce Boxes has a group which is subscribers and producers and farmers, where that they can share information. We have me to, a lot of people will send me queries on a daily basis of, I'm looking for a worker to work on my farm, and do you know anyone? I'm looking for some volunteers to help me get this roof back on. During the fires, it was really, really important, and we set up a separate branch that was fire and drought relief with a different coordinator, so we could funnel everything to one place, and he would send information out to the group saying, we need someone to help pull up all of this garlic that was burnt in the fires that is just going to sour the ground. So can we have some volunteers? Or we need to get a roof back on this shed that was blown off in the high winds. And I think a lot of it is, it's just people connections. And there is a group of us that will just funnel emails around and find the right people to fill the right gaps.
Yeah, the Bush Telegraph.
Yes.
With internet.
Can I jump in there, Amy?
Please.
I think that part of the way that Southern Harvest developed, and the farmers market produce boxes and the Harvest Festival developed, was over a period of probably about 5 years, with really close connection with the other community groups across Canberra. So whether that was, Canberra City Farm, Slow Food, there's a large group. And I think that I guess, working with those organisations as well, but focusing fairly much entirely on food and regional food provision, and working out where the gaps were that producers and consumers weren't meeting to be able to access local food was what sort of drove that from the beginning in terms of developing the farmers markets and developing the produce boxes. And I'm so excited to see how this has progressed, because I'm not there anymore and I wish I was, because I don't get to eat beautiful food. But yeah, I think that whole larger community as well, there's a real synergy amongst that. I think that's all contributed to it.
Yeah, amazing. And it is a really interesting model, I guess, because, you know, we are talking about it as it is regional, but the fact that it's on the doorstep of a capital city, you do kind of have to float between the two. And sometimes in the big cities, you know, things kind of can and do get lost. People do feel disconnected and without their community. But I guess that's something that people in the city, you know, we can learn from our regional cousins, how to stay connected and how to, keep connected.
Yeah, one of the things, if I can jump in, that I've enjoyed, besides I enjoy the social aspect of the markets every Saturday morning, rain, snow, and whatever. But also we have a regular series of mutual farm visits where we have a meeting at somebody's property, and we get producers coming together as well as the committee members, and just seeing how other people do things and what their problems are. And I find that very informative and very interesting.
That is great. And I guess learning in person and meeting face to face, that's a very different and very real way to yes, like you said, learn things and get to know one another. I guess especially at the moment, we're spending so much time on our screens, and but yeah, I guess it is really important to get back to land.
I'd just like to echo what Jeff said. I've been to a number of the seasonal gatherings, and it's great as a subscriber to learn about different ways of farming, see the farmers interact with each other, and meet other subscribers. So there's just little community connections going everywhere as part of those. I think they've been really important part of kind of cross-referencing everything that Southern Harvest does.
If there's anyone who is online this evening that would like, I'm getting comments that you can't hear me that well. Can you hear me if I speak louder?
I can hear you.
Hear me? Well, some of the attendees can't really hear me. But if there are any questions people would like to ask, feel free to turn your mic on and fire away. If you'd prefer to write the questions, you can, and I can ask it on your behalf. Is there anything that is a particular challenge for Southern Harvest? You guys seem to do so many things. Is there anything in particular that's sort of challenging or points of conflict or things that you kind of can't really get over or get around that you sort of have that kind of come to mind? Now we can't hear you, Ruth. You're on mute.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I think a lot of it has been a struggle and challenging. The whole journey's been very, very challenging because we are creating a new economy. We are creating a new community or bringing together a very disparate community. But I don't think there's any one thing that's been insurmountable. Everything has grown slowly and organically, and because of that, I think the connections are fitted together really well. But it has been slow and it has been difficult, really difficult at times. And there's been a few times where I wasn't sure that we were going to pull through. We had to shut our second farmers market because we just weren't able to make it viable. Because I think that community was not the right demographic and they weren't ready for it. But we have managed to keep going with the Bungendore one through some really interesting times, and financially we hit rock bottom a couple of times, but now, and I think it's a result of the produce box scheme, because it fitted more people's needs than previous things we had been doing, and people feel really, really connected to their food in that way. It's worked well, and we are now sitting in a viable position to keep growing that scheme and other things we're doing.
Wonderful. Any other challenges to note? No? All good. So there's a question here that says, how do you manage what produce you get from different growers so you don't get kale gluts, etc.?
We're in a kale glut at the moment. Everyone's getting kale and lettuce at the moment. But it's probably one of the most difficult parts of it. And we tried doing projections for a while and getting the producers to communicate what they were planting moving into the next season. It didn't really work well initially, but we're planning to try it again soon, now that we've been going for a couple of years. I just, as the person generally doing the ordering, have to get producers to tell me what's coming up, and also let them know myself what other people have. So I'm just really clear with them. If all you have is kale, I'll definitely buy kale from you. But if you have kale and 3 different other things, I'll buy a little bit of kale from you and a little bit of kale from someone else and a little bit of kale from someone else, just so that we try and split the love evenly across the producers that have product available that week.
Mm-hmm. And for the consumers, is there a set price that they sort of pay, and it's a mixed bag that they get each week? So some weeks there's a bounty, and then sometimes a bit more of a famine.
Yeah, very like a CSA. In that sense, we ask people to pay up front. They pay for a 13-week season, and they can choose a size of their box. It's not a weight, it's a size. You can have 4 items, 8 items, or 10 items, or any multiple of that. And you can prioritize. You can say, I would like more fruit, or I would like more leafy greens, and I don't eat potatoes. But that's about the extent of their customization of their boxes.
Sure. You're getting a lot of love from the Southern Harvest people on the chat.
I can't see the chat.
Oh, it's never a famine with the box from Southern Harvest. A comment from Lizzie Smith.
Lizzie's also one of our volunteers.
Oh, fantastic. I guess it'd be good to hear from you, Ruth, again on when you mentioned, it's slow, we're building a new economy. What are some of the ways, and we chatted about this earlier this afternoon, the ways in which people can interact with Southern Harvest that's not necessarily financial?
So people can volunteer in the scheme, and they don't actually have to be a subscriber or a member. Well, they do. If they're volunteer, we ask them to become a member because it covers our insurance, but we also can make that possible without a financial contribution to make it available to everybody. We have looked over the years at a pay it forward system for people to be able to receive fresh produce if they don't have the means otherwise. And there's also the opportunity to get involved in the markets, in education courses, in farm days, in festivals. We haven't been able to do a lot of that over the last 6 to 8 months, but hopefully we will again soon.
Fantastic. And so this exchanging of sort of labour for people in order to receive the boxes that they do, you mentioned that there was also some resilience built in for farmers should they need financial help at any point.
The idea is that if it's paid up front, that money is available to the farmers if they have unforeseen circumstances and they need an income boost.
And have you had occasions where that's happened in the past?
Yes, we've done that once. It's only been asked for once, but it's always available.
Amazing. A question here, have you been able to work in a symbiotic way with other groups in the region?
Yes. We work quite closely at the moment with Canberra City Farm because that's where our packing premises is located. paid for just about exclusively by our subscribers, I'd like to note. We have 2 20-foot shipping containers converted into cool rooms, and we have that out at Canberra City Farm. We have a number of partnership agreements with organisations like Canberra City Farm, where we can make membership cheaper for people that are in multiple organisations. We can make different programs and activities like we would for our members, for their members, available. And we sell product from the farm and from other enterprises on the farm through our produce box scheme and through the markets. We do a lot of cross-pollination with organisations like Camp Seed Savers and Slow Food and Sea Change. I'm sure there's others. It's gone a bit blank now. But yes, yeah, we work quite well with other not-for-profit community organisations.
Another question, do the produce boxes include other items than fruit and veg, e.g. eggs, dairy, meat?
Yes, people can opt to order those as extra items in their boxes. We did all that manually up until COVID time, where I would send out an email each week and people would say what they wanted. These again all come from our local farmers and producers. After we increased our numbers quite dramatically with COVID and needed to look at resiliency options if we couldn't keep running the market, we started selling through Open Food Network, and that's been amazing to have that online platform for all our extra items. We have a shop available for our members and our subscribers twice a week to order all of their extra items. We get eggs and dairy and preserves and pasta and fresh bread and all the extra things that you would want to add to your fresh produce each week.
Wow, Ruth. And from what I know about Open Food Network, if Southern Harvest is a hub, does that mean all of your producers have to be producers on the OFN as well?
Yes.
Great. Super interesting. There's a comment here, mention the community stall, if that's still at the market.
Sorry?
Mention the community stall, if that's still at the markets.
Yes, so the community stall was something that we initiated a number of years back, and it was one of the things that actually stopped the farmers market from shutting down when we didn't feel we had the viability. We don't allow agents at the markets, but we set up what we called a community stall that allowed all of our members to have product on a stall, even if they didn't have their own, if they didn't have the capacity to have their own stall, or if it wasn't viable for them. So it's essentially a members stall where we, as Southern Harvest, sell product from our members.
Great. And someone's wanting to know who actually owns Southern Harvest.
It's a community-owned not-for-profit, so a member organisation.
Yeah, beautiful. I'd like to ask Jeff a question, just with his history of farming. What is it about Southern Harvest that is different to the way in which you farmed for 25, 30 odd years? And do you see in the future of farming more organisations like Southern Harvest popping up?
Well, yeah, I'm not farming any differently now. It's more in the marketing side of things that's been of help to me. And Ruth mentioned the spring, typically a springtime glut of things like lettuces and kale and stuff like that. And that's something that is, we will probably have to change, coordinate better, but it's rather difficult. It's like herding cats, I think, trying to get farmers to say what they're going to be producing in 2 or 3 months' time. And you don't always know what the next person's going to be doing. So I'll probably change what I'm doing to some degree in the light of that. That's sort of in the light of experience. Like I'm one of the ones that've got a glut of kale. They're all bolting now, so chances are that they'll end up in the compost pile. But then that's life.
You can relabel them as sprouting broccoli. Just cut off the
Yeah, the tiny little broccoli heads.
micro broccoli.
Yeah.
We've got Tammi Jonas on the line. Tam, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a question, and I feel like I should know the answer to this, but I don't. The early days where Southern Harvest was started as a sort of government initiative with government funding that involved producers, and then this transition, this takeover by the producers and the eaters. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. We have a producers group that's kind of supported by our local council that I'm spending an awful lot of time that I don't think is what we need. But I feel like I want to know how to stage the revolution and take it over for our region, and whether that's a thing that's possible. I think Penny knows that story the best probably, but yeah, how'd you do it?
Oh, come on, Tammy, you're the revolutionist, not me.
But you did it.
No, it was set up to be a producer-led organisation. And I remember turning up to an AGM and every single one of the committee members was a government person, and they were, hell-bent on their strictness with their minutes and everything else, and trying to encourage producers to join. And part of the problem I saw it was they were all getting paid to attend the meetings, and we were taking time off the farm to attend the meetings. So the change, I think, came about when we said, look, if you want us to be involved, you need to bring it to us. We're not driving to Goulburn or Canberra or wherever that might be. You need to bring it to us if you want us to lead it, because they did want us to lead it. And sort of made it on our terms, I guess. So I don't know whether you can change the constitution or something to say that it has to be X percentage, and they'll end up leaving because they don't actually work well with farmers anyway.
Thanks.
A question here, can you see Southern Harvest growing or replicating to help feed most of the region?
I could see it being a very replicable activity, and I think in many ways a multi-farm scheme fills a niche in areas where you have, like we do here, a lot of not only small regional farms, but urban and peri-urban farms as well, that are growing a small amount but not enough for a full box scheme, and by coming together they create something stronger. And also I think with our current situation, people are really looking for those shorter food chains, those more stable options that they can tangibly see where their food is coming from. So I think right now is the time to start replicating these schemes and doing more local food while people are engaged, while people are really looking for that option.
And
can I comment on that one, Amy? I think one of the things with the setting up of the multi-farm produce box scheme by Southern Harvest was that we were really looking, Southern Harvest with the whole educational background and everything else, looking to grow the regional food supply. And to do that, we had to grow help multiple small farms grow. And it was a way for them to have a sort of another income stream apart from where they were already selling stuff, and to have a dedicated outlet. And I think it, in terms of replicating it, in order to grow regional food production, a multi-farm produce box has worked really well.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of bandwidth, I know that we've chatted about volunteers, and Bronwyn, maybe you can speak on behalf of volunteers, but do you think that in times of COVID, people have found time to volunteer, or do you think that it's genuinely something that people will continue to put time towards it, and something that they see value in?
I think it's something that people will continue to put time towards, and particularly as part of COVID, I think we've seen that increased desire to be part of something and to be part of a solution. One of our regular volunteers actually lost his job during COVID as a result of COVID, and for him, his 2.5-3 hour shift at packing produce was a really important part of getting him through, you know, several months of being unemployed, but keeping his spirits up to be able to keep applying for more and more jobs. So I think, and he's not the only one. There are lots of people who have said that volunteering makes them feel like they're doing something tangible and practical, and has helped overcome things like climate grief and other sorts of things. So I really think that the spirit is there, and I think, kind of as Ruth was saying before, going from sort of 4 or 5 regular volunteers up to 15 or 16 routinely, we don't seem to have had much of a problem recently with volunteer turnover.
Well, the other thing I would add to that, Bron, is that sudden increase in our output, which we plugged that gap of capacity with volunteers, but that sudden increase also increased our viability really, really quickly and allowed us to also employ a second person. So that second person then took on a little bit of that work that was being done by volunteers, and took some of the pressure off the volunteers, because it was really, in the beginning, it was like, now we need more people or we're going to fold in half. Can anybody help? And ringing around and trying to find enough people. And we've now sort of settled into that new normal with another staff member, and we're viably paying a second wage and looking now at our budget to probably employ another person in the next couple of weeks and a 4th person by summer. So it's also creating jobs for our local community as well, and most of these people are people that are already involved. So I think it's got multiple benefits in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I've just found a quote from one of the volunteers in our recent survey that might be, you know, just kind of underscore that point. And what they say is, it's more than just produce boxes. Since being a volunteer, there is something else that makes the scheme work and have value. And that's the dedication of the coordinator, volunteers, and the producers towards a common goal. It's helped me feel part of a community and reaffirmed the importance for not self-sustainability, but community sustainability. So I think that sort of speaks volumes to how people volunteering feel like a greater sense of alignment between like their actual self and their idealized self, but actually it's more than that. It's a kind of collective consciousness, more than just the individual parts.
And Bronwyn, in the research that you're doing, are you focusing on Southern Harvest specifically, or is it sort of a general box scheme, you know, veggie kind of CSA?
So I've been focusing on Southern Harvest, developing some of this with Southern Harvest, but in my other life as a student, I'm also looking at community supported agriculture and other sort of solidarity economy type relationships. So while the Southern Harvest stuff I've done is been separate and developed in collaboration with Southern Harvest to help meet some of the needs that they might have, potentially to help support grant applications in future if we can have some data to support the impact that we're having. But I've also been looking at sort of single farm community supported agriculture across Australia and Aotearoa New Zealand as well.
I mean, Southern Harvest is just such a wonderful case study. It's super interesting. A question here. It sounds like you have a shortage of producers, not consumers. How do you see your role in addressing this?
I think the fact that we are slowly continuing to grow is proof that what we're doing is already addressing that. We haven't changed the amount of producers that we started with really a great deal, but we've been able to continually increase the subscriptions. And I think Jeff could talk to this. I know that the produce box scheme for him has allowed him to increase his sales and production. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah. To quite an extent, I think over the years I've been a member, my sales have gone up something like 40, 45, and that's from increased production. So, yeah.
And I think that's been the same for a number of our producers. Bronwyn's got some numbers from our recent producer survey that shows that I think just about everyone had increased production as a result of being involved in the produce box scheme, because they could grow more without any actual increased administration or having to go to markets and that sort of thing.
I've got the stats here if you want.
Give us a quick stat.
Quick stat nerd update. So we've got 3/4 of the producer respondents said that they sell more. They sell more produce because of the produce box scheme. Half of them said that they grow either moderately or substantially more produce. And the other half said there was no change in what they grow. But half of them say they have either moderately or substantially less produce that is left unsold. So they're actually selling more of what they already grow. So I think there's a couple of different scenarios there, but pretty much everyone is getting some kind of benefit.
Ruth, that was a big part of Southern Harvest when it first set up, is that right? Like to sort of catch the surplus and take that to market?
Yes, that was one of the goals of the produce box scheme.
I've got a bit of an energy descent future question. How would Southern Harvest fare if fuel supplies were disrupted?
I think we would definitely feel an impact from that, as would just about everybody. However, our supply chains are reasonably short, and for many of them, it's within 5 to 10s of kilometres rather than hundreds of kilometres. Our general catchment on a week-to-week basis, especially in summer, is very, very small. It's 20 to 50 kilometres probably at the outside. In winter, it gets bigger, and we go right to the edges of our catchment, which is about probably 200 to 300 kilometres. But sure, there would definitely be an impact, but probably not as much as other types of supply chains.
Sure. Lizzie Smith is saying, my horse is looking useful in that scenario. And I would recommend that maybe your volunteers would be out there, doing the work of what the tractor would be doing if there was really fuel shortages.
Yeah, and many of our consumers, for them, can pedal, because we have now 7 pickup points around Canberra and the region, and many of them can ride their push bikes to pick up their produce every day, so they don't have to travel very far.
Yeah, very cool. Maybe one of the last questions before we wrap up. So if anyone does have any questions they want to have answered, send them through. Are there any threats to Southern Harvest apart from impending climate change?
Yeah, like freak storms and fires and COVID. I think we've weathered all the threats in the last 8 months or to year. I think we've shown we can get through.
Climate change.
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, this is the new norm, right? Like, I guess this is not a drill anymore.
Yeah.
But we keep adapting.
Something that's interesting that came out of the survey was that around half of the farmers said that being part of the Southern Harvest Produce Box scheme actually helped their ability to adapt to climate change. So I'm not sure about the mechanism of that, whether it's about sort of knowledge sharing or freeing up time to put in adaptation measures, but I thought that was really interesting.
All right, well, we might leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this evening. We've really, I've definitely enjoyed chatting with you all.
Thank you.
Great. Tam, do you want to jump in and do a thank you, and then I can wrap it up and talk about our next session?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to, on behalf of AFSA, but also just I think everyone here, thank you for taking the time to share the Southern Harvest story. And I've been inspired by it for a long time, and following along with Penny and Ruth has been great to see the progress and the developments and the hard work and the tears and the sweat. But just to see a community that has worked together so well and for so long now, and to see it really flourishing, you know, as a result of all of that work and all of that solidarity. I mean, these solidarity sessions are to show what solidarity can create, and you've shown us a really beautiful result. So thanks for sharing the story. It's been awesome.
Thanks, Tammi.
Definitely, and I echo that. And jump on the chat now, because there's lots of people saying that they've enjoyed it and giving their thanks.
And Amy, thank you again for sharing. You've done a beautiful job as always.
Pleasure.
And for Amita for handling the background on all of the technical aspects.
Yeah. Fantastic. So the next solidarity session we have is our number 10. And we are going to be chatting with Nina, which is the New Economy Network Australia. That'll happen on Tuesday, the 6th of October. So do join us. We're going to chat about how they manage to connect movements across different industries all over Australia, which is, yeah, an important part of this general wider conversation. We also have our convergence coming up next month. We have Rob Wallace is kicking off on the 15th of October with his book launch. I do have his book somewhere, but yes, he wrote Big Farm, Big Flu, super topical at the moment, with guests like Jahi Chappelle and Tammi Jonas will be there talking about the systemic issues of COVID-19. So it's free for members, so come along to that. And then that week from the 19th to the 23rd of October, we'll have 1-hour sessions over lunchtime, talking about a slew of different things. And then we have our AGM on Saturday the 24th with a plenary session with a wrap up. So yeah, do join us if you liked this. It's more of this. So we'll all be there. Actually,
can I just add to that, Amy? So the convergence is run as an unconference, and the content is actually determined by those who turn up. So you don't have to, it's not a conference where you turn up and somebody's predetermined that content. If you think there are matters around food sovereignty that should be discussed, you come and propose that, and then sessions happen, so we talk about them. And it'd be great to have you bring whatever things you're worried about right now or excited about.
Fantastic. A shout out to Colleen Foster. He was my co-host on this, sending me lots of questions. So appreciate the support and your curiosity. Very cool. All right, that's it. Feel free to turn your cameras back on, and you can give everyone a wave.
Bye, everyone from Big Mountain.
Bye, Penny. Miss you.
Talk to you. Love you all.
Take care. Bye.